Early one morning, Takei is running to the school gymnasium, but aside from his enthusiasm to practice, there's someone there that he wants to see. And the second he arrives and opens the gym door, he is mesmerized by Chinatsu's beauty, but he also gets hit in the face with a basketball. Once Chinatsu realizes what she has done, she rushes over to him and begins apologizing because she didn't see him enter. Takei doesn't really mind though, and honestly, he's just glad that he gets the chance to talk to her, because to him, she's the perfect girl. She defends, she attack, but most importantly, she always has pocket Kit Kat. The Kit Kat is her way of apologizing for the ball he took to the face, and Takei is more than happy to accept. Later on in the day, the gym is packed, and Takei is currently fantasizing about what his life could be if he were married to Chinatsu, but his friend gives him a reality check and says that's never going to happen. He can't even ask her out on a date, so how exactly does he intend to get married to her? Even if he had the courage to ask her out, she's the Kobe of the girls' basketball team, and she's pretty popular both in and out of the school. In contrast, Takei plays badminton, and he hasn't achieved a single thing, nor has he even played in any tournaments, so Chinatsu is way out of his league. To top it all off, the only time he ever gets to talk to her is when he gets here early to practice, and he couldn't possibly ask her out then. Takei retorts that he has other ways of naturally contacting Chinatsu, because his mom is an alumnus for the basketball team, so he can weasel his way in somehow. Takei realizes that getting together with Chinatsu is pretty much a fool's dream for him, but he also knows that he will never get anywhere with her if he doesn't at least try. Kyo sees that Takei is serious about this, so as a friendly word of advice, he tells him to work on getting her to remember his name first, then he can work on asking for her contact info and go from there. Just then, another one of Takei's friends walks up behind him and asks what Takei is thinking about, but she nearly knocked him down to get his attention. So Takei starts yelling and calls her a child, but she retorts that she's in the same class as Takei. He then calls her short because she has barely grown at all since middle school, but Takei is also short, so he doesn't have much high ground to mock her from. Once the two of them stop fighting, Hina asks Takei if there's a problem he needs help with because he looks anxious and he wouldn't exactly consider it a problem, but he has been trying to figure out a way to get girls to like him. Hina is excited to hear this and immediately offers to help by going down her list of things girls find attractive in a guy, like reliability, coolness, and being as hot as a movie star with a 12-inch magnum. She was a little too enthusiastic about that last part, so Takei and Kyo get a little weirded out, and while heading at the gym, he regrets ever asking her about it. Just then, his train of thought is cut off because while he was thinking of ways to get close to Chinatsu, he failed to notice that she was sitting on the steps outside the gymnasium. The door must still be locked, so this is the perfect chance for him to start a conversation with her. He just needs to figure out what to say. At first, he thinks about just introducing himself, but he thinks that would be a little too straightforward, so he wants to naturally start a conversation with her by asking about the book she's reading. But then he notices that the book is about basketball strategy, and he knows nothing about that, so he wouldn't be able to hold a conversation on the topic. He decides to just stay quiet to avoid embarrassing himself, but then the perfect opportunity presents itself as Chinatsu sneezes, so Takei immediately gets on his knees and offers her his scarf. Chinatsu is a bit shocked by this sudden gesture, but Takei is nowhere near done because he starts pulling out all sorts of warm stuff, including hot tea, gloves, and a pocket heater. A few seconds later, Chinatsu realizes he may have been a little too enthusiastic about helping her, but Chinatsu is smiling at him, so it must have worked out well. She thought he was funny and honestly wanted to see how much stuff he had packed in his backpack. She appreciates Takei trying to look out for her, but she says he needs to keep himself warm as well and gives him his scarf back. This situation is better than anything Takei could have hoped for because it's basically the same thing newlyweds do for their husbands. Just as she finishes fixing his scarf, the officer with the key arrives, so she calls Takei by name and says goodbye. Takei is shocked that she knew his name, and he wonders if Chinatsu has been paying attention to him all this time as well, but it turns out that she just saw the name tag on his scarf. It's embarrassing, but he did get her to say his name, so for today, a win is a win. The next day, Takei has just finished his badminton practice, so he is taking a break, but he's still giddy with excitement from the fact that Chinatsu now knows his name. He has successfully become acquainted with her, so the next step is to get her to give him her contact info. As he leaves the locker room, he happens to notice Chinatsu outside talking with a basketball coach, and he can't help but stare at her. But when Hina walks up and notices him staring, she immediately figures out that Takei has a crush on Chinatsu, and she offers her condolences for the inevitable rejection he's going to face. Taiki denies having any feelings for Chinatsu, so Hina tells him she heard Chinatsu actually has a boyfriend, and Taiki starts freaking out, but it turns out she was just lying to mess with him. Late into the evening, once everyone is done with their training, all the guys are getting ready to head home, but Taiki realizes he forgot his towel in the gym, so he has to head back over to get it. Thankfully, the gym door is still unlocked, but as he walks inside, he's surprised to see Chinatsu is still practicing. He doesn't really know what to say, so he asks why she's still practicing when it's so late. Chinatsu explains that she wasn't satisfied with the way she played during training today, so she wants to practice a little before heading home. She's about to go back to her practice, but since Taiki is here now, she throws him the ball and asks him to play one-on-one with her. He's caught off guard by her request, but he goes along with it anyway, and although he's not as good as Chinatsu, he holds up pretty well. She compliments him on his stamina, so he tells her that his mom used to be on the basketball team, so she would play with him sometimes. Coincidentally, Chinatsu's mom also used to be on the basketball team, so they played together all the time before she joined the school's team. She asks if Taiki has ever thought about playing basketball as well, and he has. He was a little too intense for his teammates, but didn't work out. Besides, he enjoys badminton a lot more because he stands alone on his side, so he is solely responsible for his victory or loss, and he loves the rush he feels because of it. Chinatsu thinks that must be why Taiki works so hard, but he actually has a different reason. A year and a half ago, when Chinatsu graduated from junior high, Taiki happened to be in school over the break, so he wanted to pack up a few things he left behind. But as he opened the door, even though there was no practice scheduled for that day, he saw Chinatsu hard at work, training with tears in her eyes. Taiki later heard about how Chinatsu missed her shot to qualify for nationals by a hair, and he couldn't imagine how disappointed Chinatsu must have felt after all the hard work she put in. But seeing her work so hard made him want to work hard as well. Hearing that from Taiki struck a chord with Chinatsu, but before she can say anything, the facility officer comes in and tells them that they need to start heading home because he needs to lock up. Chinatsu and Taiki start putting away all the balls, but as Chinatsu is pushing the ball cart, one falls out and both of them try to catch it, leading to some unintentional hand touching. The next morning, Taiki is eager to get to school and see Chinatsu again, so he rushes downstairs and greets his mom, who tells him she packed a lunchbox for him. As he picks it up, he notices a magazine with Chinatsu on it, and his mom is surprised he recognizes her, so she asks if they are friends. Back in the day, Taiki's mom and Chinatsu's mom used to be on the same basketball team, and they were practically inseparable. While she says this, Taiki is busy thinking about how he could totally use this to get close to Chinatsu. Unfortunately, his mother drops a bombshell and tells him that Chinatsu is moving overseas soon, and Taiki does not take the news well. They are apparently set to move in mid-March, and now that he thinks about it, that was probably what Chinatsu was talking to her coach about the last time he saw her. You can't let things end like this, so he sprints out the door and starts running to school so he can talk to Chinatsu. There's no way she could be happy moving away after all the hard work she has put into her basketball career here, so he has something he wants to tell her. Chinatsu is in the gym as usual, so once Taiki gets there, he is out of breath, and she asks if something's wrong. Taiki needs a moment to catch his breath, but once he does, he tells Chinatsu that he wants her to make it to the nationals this year. He learned from her that working hard towards your goals and continuing to work hard even when you lose is what's really important, so he doesn't want to see her give up on her dreams. Chinatsu cuts him off there to make a small correction because she isn't actually traveling abroad. Taiki is beyond confused, so she explains that her family will indeed be traveling, but she isn't going with them and will be staying with an acquaintance instead. The silence is deafening at this point, and it may be good news for Taiki that she won't be traveling after all. But he's incredibly embarrassed after his unnecessary outburst, so he turns around to leave. Before he leaves, Chinatsu tells him that it was really tough for her to make that decision because she knows she's going to be really lonely without her family around. But thanks to the chat she had with him yesterday, she remembered the pain she felt after failing the qualifiers last time, and that made her realize that she wants to try again so she can make it to nationals. She never would have been able to make the decision without the insight he gave her, so she sincerely wants to thank Taiki. He doesn't feel like he did anything special, but it was really special to Chinatsu, so she invites him to play basketball with her sometime, and he agrees, but only if she plays badminton with him as well. Today was another victory for Taiki, but for days to come, every waking moment of his will be haunted by all the cringe things he said. He's glad today is Sunday because for once he really doesn't want to see Chinatsu. However, as he goes downstairs, he is shocked to see her standing in his kitchen. Yeah, remember that acquaintance Chinatsu said she would be living with while her family is gone. It turns out it was Takei's mom, so she's going to be living with him starting next spring. When the time finally comes for Chinatsu to move in, Takei's entire family comes out to greet her, and they are all extremely welcoming, but Takei is still having a hard time accepting that this is his reality now. He was having a hard enough time talking to her at school, so how's he supposed to handle seeing her every day for the next 2 years? And just as he is having his mental breakdown, Chinatsu knocks on his door to tell him that it's his turn to use the bath. The first thing Takei notices is that Chinatsu is still damp from the bath, and his mind is immediately filled with all kinds of impure thoughts, so he tries to distract himself by reading his Jump magazine. He is doing his best not to think about her, but then she gets up close to his face to see what he's reading, and it's a lot harder to ignore her now. She recognizes the Shonen Jump series because she follows it as well, although she hasn't gotten to read this issue yet, so Takei offers to just lend it to her so she can catch up on her favorite manga. Takei panics a little when he sees Chinatsu staring at him, and he's trying his hardest to keep his cool, but she is smiling because she's just glad that he's here with her. It is really nerve-wracking for her to live in someone else's house, and even though their mothers are friends, she has only met Takei's mom a couple of times before, so having Takei around is really comforting. With that said, she wishes him a good night and leaves his room, after which Takei heads to the bathroom for his bath. He feels guilty for thinking unholy thoughts when Chinatsu is looking to him for comfort, and she didn't seem all that bothered by the idea of living under the same roof with a guy, so he is going to do his best to act normal around her as well. But that's easier said than done, because when he realizes he is going to be using the same bath water as Chinatsu, he loses his cool, and if things keep going like this, he won't make it halfway through November. The next morning, Takei is full of energy, so he is putting his all into his training, and Kyo understands why Takei is happy, but he warns him not to let others find out about his new living situation. Takei doesn't see what the problem could be, so Kyo directs his attention to the side of the court where Chinatsu is training, but he isn't pointing at Chinatsu. He is pointing at the legion of fanboys who have a crush on her just like him. If Takei slips up and the other guys find out that Chinatsu is living with him, he will become a major target for them no matter where he goes. Still, Kyo has to admit that it's really lucky that Chinatsu moved into his house right when he was looking for a way to get close to her so he could ask her out, but Takei doesn't intend to do that anymore. Chinatsu is only staying in Japan because she wants to achieve her goal of making it to the basketball nationals, so he can't take advantage of that and ask her out as he is now. That is why he has set a goal for himself as well and intends to do whatever it takes to make it to the badminton nationals this year. Kyo thinks a dream like that is a little too big for Takei, especially since he has never tried to compete on a national level, but Takei feels like he needs to do this so he can measure up to Chinatsu. And besides, even if he ends up failing, he still wants to see how far he can go. So he asks Kyo to play another match with him, but Kyo has had enough and says he's taking a break. While Kyo is out, Takei gets right back to practicing, and Hina notices that Takei is a lot more enthusiastic than he usually is, so she asks Kyo if something happened, and he tells her that Takei is planning to make it to nationals this year. She is surprised to hear this and asks if Kyo thinks Takei can pull it off, and Kyo doesn't have much faith that Takei will manage it, but he is clearly not going to give up until he does. Back at home, Takei continues his training routine and works out while reviewing some of his gameplay from earlier today. He is so into it that he fails to notice Chinatsu by the door, and once he finally does notice her, she asks what he's doing. Takei explains that he had someone record him while he played today, so he was just reviewing the footage. He doesn't want to show Chinatsu the footage because he's embarrassed, but Chinatsu points out that she's always watching him practice when they're at school, so it makes no difference if she sees his recording. Takei is internally ecstatic to find out that Chinatsu pays attention to him in school, and she makes a good point, so he shows her the recording, and Chinatsu is amazed by how quickly he moves on the court, but Takei isn't happy with his current level of performance at all. He is still far too slow to compete among the best, so he needs to work on that if he wants to make it to nationals. Takei then realizes that he said all that out loud in front of Chinatsu, so he tries to take it back, but it's too late. She heard him loud and clear, so she starts badgering him until he admits that he wants to make it to nationals as well. Once he finally says it directly, Chinatsu tells him to wait a minute because she has something to give him. She runs over to her room and returns a few moments later with a promise bracelet for Takei. She made a pair when she first decided to stay in Japan because she wanted to have something tangible to symbolize her resolve, and she figured Takei might appreciate having one as well. Of course, she isn't forcing him to take it if he doesn't want to, but Takei is more than happy to receive a gift from Chinatsu, so he swears that he will cherish it for the rest of his life. He is a little too enthusiastic about putting it on and is doing it way too tight, so Chinatsu offers to put it on for him instead so he doesn't cut off circulation to his foot. While helping him, Chinatsu expresses how much she hopes Taiki can make it to nationals with her, and once she's done, she wishes him a good night and leaves. Taiki was already planning on working hard, but now that he knows Chinatsu is rooting for him, he's going to work even harder than before, and to make sure he stays focused, he will do 30 sit-ups every time he has any impure thoughts about Chinatsu. The next morning in the gym, Taiki is busy doing sit-ups for no particular reason when Hina walks up to him. She asks why he's doing all those sit-ups, so he explains that he is trying to rid himself of impure thoughts, although he keeps the details vague. Hina is quick to catch on and figures something must have happened between Taiki and that basketball girl he likes, so she starts prying for more info. This is the last thing Taiki wanted to deal with, because if Hina manages to find out that the Chinatsu is living with him, then she'll end up telling everyone in the school because she's terrible with secrets. Taiki is desperately trying to shake Hina off, but he ends up running into Chinatsu, and she wants to give him his wallet since he forgot it at home. But Taiki freaks out and interrupts her because he can't let Hina find out that they live together. Chinatsu figures out that Taiki is trying to hide their situation from Hina, so she just smiles and walks away like Taiki is an absolute stranger, and Taiki is starting to think he may have overreacted a little. He later goes to talk to Kyo about it, and Kyo calls him an idiot for the way he handled things. From Chinatsu's perspective, it must have looked like Taiki was trying to act like he doesn't know her, and that could lead to all sorts of misunderstandings, possibly even making her think that he hates being around her, which is the exact opposite of the truth. Just then, both Taiki and Kyo are called over by a faculty officer, and the man instructs them to help him carry some chairs over to the other side of the building. By coincidence, Hina and Chinatsu were nearby as well, so the man asks them to help with the chairs as well. Taiki thinks this could be the perfect opportunity to clear up the misunderstandings with Chinatsu. However, as he offers to help her carry some of the chairs, she says no thanks and walks away like he's a stranger. She's definitely got to be angry about the way he acted earlier, and as Hina sees this, she decides to take it upon herself to become Taiki's wingwoman. While they all walk to the other side of the building, Hina goes up to Chinatsu and asks if she's got a boyfriend, and though it's an odd question to be asked out of nowhere, Chinatsu answers that she is single right now. Hina then asks if Chinatsu would like to have a boyfriend. The answer is no, since she's focusing all her energy on basketball, so she doesn't have time for dating. Hina starts panicking since she believes Taiki must be devastated by this news, but he already knew Chinatsu would respond like that because basketball is the most important thing to her. Once they are down moving the chairs, they get back to practice, and while Taiki is hard at work, he notices Chinatsu take a nasty fall, and he would like to go check on her. But he hesitates because he can't have people realize that they are close. When Chinatsu goes to take a break, he follows her and asks if she's alright. Chinatsu says she is fine, but she's surprised he came to talk to her because she thought he wanted to act like strangers at school. Taiki apologizes for not talking to her about this sooner, but she is really popular here, and if people found out they were living together, all sorts of rumors would start flying around, and it would only distract them from their training. Chinatsu understands that, but she honestly thought Taiki was ignoring her because he liked Hina. He only started acting like that in front of Hina, and then Hina started probing to find out if Chinatsu had a boyfriend. So Chinatsu assumed Hina and Taiki might have a thing for each other. She was even considering sleeping in the shed from now on so she would make things awkward, but she completely misread the situation, and Taiki finds that adorable. Now that the misunderstanding is cleared up, they head back to practice, and the badminton coach addresses all the players to prepare them for the upcoming preliminaries. Those who show exceptional skill will be put on the school's team and have the chance to play through the qualifiers for the regional and prefectural tournaments till nationals. Taiki will have to place first or second in the prefecture in order to qualify for nationals, and to do that, he's going to have to be better than Haryu, who placed third in the tournament last year. Taiki notices that the number of spectators has been increasing lately, although half of them are here to watch Chinatsu play, and the other half are here to watch Hina's gymnastics routine. Hina is so good that she is already ranked 4th among the best gymnasts in the country, and continues to improve so that she could one day become number 1. Once she is done with her routine, she goes over to Taiki and demands payment for looking at her so much, and Taiki knows she's just messing with him, but if he plays along, Chinatsu might start to think he likes Hina again, so he turns to go back to practice, but that makes Hina feel like Taiki is avoiding her. Later that day, while Taiki is heading home for the day, Hina sneaks up behind him as a surprise. Teiki has no idea why she's here since her house is in the opposite direction, but Hina explains that a famous chiropractor opened an office in the Azuma area, so she's here to check it out. Teiki thinks that's cool, but then he realizes that he lives in the Azuma area, so if he's not careful, Hina might see Chinatsu walking into his house and his secret will get out. To stop that from happening, he intends to get Hina in and out of the chiropractor's office before Chinatsu gets home, but that's difficult to do because Hina keeps stopping along the way to look at cute things. When she gets distracted by a takoyaki stand, Teiki offers to just buy some for her so they can get moving again. But even though Hina really wants some, she turns it down because she can't afford to gain weight. As a top gymnast, she needs to keep her body in perfect condition. And when it comes down to it, it's a lot easier to stop herself from eating excess than it is to work out and burn off the extra calories. Hina notices that Teiki has a weird look on his face, but he's just in disbelief that someone like Hina could actually be so disciplined. Jokes aside, Hina is on a totally different level of talent than he is, so we can't help but admire how dedicated and cool she is. Hina appreciates the compliment and she says she also thinks Teiki is cool. After all, he can now hold a conversation with the girl he likes instead of awkwardly staring at her from across the gym like he used to. Teiki can tell she's making fun of him, but Hina is serious when she says she will do anything to help with Teiki's love life because they are best friends. Just then, Teiki notices that Hina is staring at someone behind him, and while Hina tries to stop him from looking, he turns around anyway and sees Chinatsu and Hayaru walking together. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.